Surprise, surprise, the House has voted on articles of impeachment against President Trump.
And now the question is, what happens now? Joining us to weigh in is Kyle Kulinski, host of the Kyle Kulinski Show and great friend of our show. Great to see you,
That's
sir.
Right. How are you, Kyle?
Good to see you guys, too. How you doing?
Now, you've been such an outspoken supporter of Nancy Pelosi's impeachment strategy. We had to get you on to weigh in on this historic moment.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so there was like a really interesting article I read the other day about how there's a debate going on right now about what will happen in the Senate. Because one school of thought is the Republicans are saying, let's just get this over with quickly and let's just acquit President Trump and move on. And then the other school of thought was, well, no, let's drag this out because the longer we talk about it, that means that the focus is on Joe Biden and it's on Hunter Biden. So we're going to try to make it feel like it's not President Trump who's up for impeachment. It's Joe Biden and Hunter Biden on trial, and this could help in 2020. So I think the school of thought that's winning out is the idea that it's going to be a shorter impeachment. But that goes to show you just how, bungled this was from the beginning and how they picked, like, quite literally the weakest argument they could possibly pick for impeachment. And, basically it's funny because it's going exactly according to what my prediction was, which is pass the House and then going to die in the Senate. And then, the same people on Twitter who are super happy over it passing the House are going to be like, wow, who could have seen this coming that he got acquitted in the Senate? Like, anybody who really pays attention to this stuff could have seen that coming. Everybody except the Democrats who were pretending like there was any other possible outcome.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Kyle, which is that I said this, I think 2 weeks after the impeachment acquittal vote, nobody will be talking about it. Both the Republicans and the Democrats. It is just such a nothing burger whenever it comes to what people actually care about, that it really is one of the worst political strategies if you were trying to damage President Trump in any way.
Yeah, by the way, never say nothing burger again. But the Muller Report. This reminds me of the Muller Report. It reminds me of the Muller Report because the Muller Report, everybody was like, it was the only story that dominated the headlines. It got like the majority of coverage for so long. And then when the conclusion was like, yeah, we're not really going to get him on collusion or anything like that, then everybody like kind of dropped it. But there was never like a moment where they were all like, hey, we really botched this thing. They just pretended like the critics all along were wrong, even though we were right. And so there was no moment of like, wow, we really messed this up and these other people got it right. It's like they knew they got it wrong, but they weren't ever going to say it. They weren't going to admit it up front. They weren't going to like give any credence to the opponents of it. And it's funny because, I know as somebody who's obviously strongly on the left, even when the criticism comes from somebody on the left and obviously from a good place, they're still just like super dismissive. And there's no room for any kind of constructive criticism when it comes to the Democrats. They just dismiss everything as like part of like a vast right-wing conspiracy. And, you're somehow soft on President Trump or sympathetic to President Trump if you disagree on going all in on the Mueller report or all in on this goofy angle of impeachment.
Right. No, there's no room for, if you are not 100% on board with this specific impeachment strategy pushed by Pelosi and the Democratic establishment, then you're like a Russian asset or you're pro-Trump or whatever. I mean, it's completely absurd. I wanted to get your thoughts on, there was an idea floated by Chris Van Hollen. I don't know if this is real or if they're just trying to put some kind of pressure on Republicans, which is obviously going to fail in the end. But they said essentially, if we don't get our way with the Senate impeachment trial and get to call the witnesses that we want, the House shouldn't even send the articles of impeachment up to the Senate and we should just not have a trial. Which personally, look, I honestly think at this point that would be the best solution for them. Like, just don't have a trial at all. Let's just sort of admit failure and move on with this whole thing as fast as we can, because the longer that we drag it out, the more of a distraction it is from the things that voters actually care about. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you, Crystal. I think that if it's shorter, it's better for the Democrats. If it's dragged out, it's worse for the Democrats, because I really have been like pretty amazed at how well Trump has been able to flip everything every step of the way. And like, it gets to that letter that he wrote the other day where the coverage on mainstream media was like unanimously mocking the letter. Jake Tapper said, this is like something Kim Jong-un would write. And it's like, well, actually, no, Kim Jong-un would have like murdered his political opponents quite a while ago. He wouldn't have sent like a strongly worded letter. Like, thank you for the absurd hyperbole. But like, it's funny because I read through the letter and like, yeah, sure, there are parts where it's just silly, standard Republican talking points. Like the Democrats want open borders and high crime. And it's like, shut up. That makes no sense. But there are parts of it where you're reading through it and you're like, he's kind of presenting like a much more clear-cut case for his side on impeachment than the Democrats have ever done ever for their side on impeachment, where the Democrats are all over the place and they're calling special witnesses and everybody's contradicting themselves. And then Trump's out there, he's like, no quid pro quo. Zelensky said he felt no pressure whatsoever. And he kind of sums it up in a very good way.
So what I think perfectly illustrates this is the USMCA is going to be voted on today. So like they vote to impeach President Trump, and then the next day, they're going to vote to pass the landmark trade deal for the Trump administration. And Jimmy Dore pointed this out on this show. Not only with the USMCA, they also voted in order to give wide latitude, the executive branch, in an extra $100 billion for the defense budget so that we could have the executive branch could have even more power. So you have to make up your mind. I mean, should he go or should he have the immense latitude given under the NDAA bill and USMCA? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so now you're giving him multiple things to brag about because he's going to brag about defeating impeachment. He's going to brag about being acquitted, just like when he did it with the Muller Report. This was a witch hunt. It was a hoax. It was all right. Ridiculous. And then now you're going to see it with impeachment. See, the do-nothing Democrats tried to impeach me, and I won again, of course. But then I also got my trade deal, and I also got my military budget. And it's the most amazing, tremendous thing. We have the best economy ever. And it's like you're handing him victory after victory. And the thing that drives me crazy is that, so it was probably a little over a month ago now where the Democrats passed through the House an increase in the minimum wage. They passed a $15 minimum wage. I haven't heard any Democrat say anything about that at all. When it's a position that 80% of the American public agrees with, the Republicans totally oppose it across the board. And you would think that they would take a political victory like that and say, why isn't Donald Trump signing this bill that 80% of the American people want? Why aren't they doing that? The Democrats also recently passed dental included in Medicare. So they, expanded Medicare coverage to include dental. And they never said anything about it. So this is the conundrum we're in, is that even when the Democrats do something positive, nobody talks about it. Nobody uses it as a political strategy. And then they're also just willing to bend over backwards to hand Donald Trump wins. And somehow they rationalize it like they're not doing that. And that's exactly what's happening with impeachment. That's exactly what's happening with the military budget and all the other issues that you named.
Yeah. And what you're pointing to is so important because not only could they message better on it, but they could have won some of these battles. They could have increased the minimum wage. They could have gotten dental care included in Medicare if they focused even a fraction of the attention and energy that they've put on Russia and Ukraine and impeachment, et cetera, on making people's lives better, issues that you rightly point out have like 80% support. No one could have ultimately resisted that pressure, including this president, if you had relentlessly pushed and had people in the streets and cable news coverage around that. Not only would have been better political messaging, they actually would have won some of those battles.
They want to do what I call anti-Trump shortcuts. They want to resist without resisting. And that's exactly what impeachment comes down to. That's exactly what the Mueller report was. Because if you resist him substantively, if you resist him on the policies, the Democrats are also kind of making their donors mad in the process, whether it's Wall Street or the military-industrial complex or others. So that's the conundrum that they're in, is they have to try to find a way to appear like we're really resisting him hard without actually resisting him in terms of his agenda, because his agenda is that of the establishment, and the Democrats are also part of the establishment.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Kyle. It's so funny. I actually saw a Politico reporter who even said, advice to any lobbying group, if you didn't get what you wanted in this year's spending package, you should get a new lobbyist. Because it was a K Street bonanza, right? I mean, they went out there, they had all the medical device tax or whatever was repealed, all these different things that we're supposed to pay for, Obamacare were ultimately repealed. Literally anything you can think of was added into this earmark, into the spending spending bill for tax repeals and all these K Street packages. But it's like you're saying, nothing that actually wanted to benefit workers or like anything from a mass movement of politics. By the way, from the right and from the left was included in this. Nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the NDAA, which you already brought up, which passed. The Democrats were saying, "Oh, this is a beautiful compromise bill,"
right.
And you know what they were pointing to say that, to make that case? They were saying, "Oh, we got like paid family leave in there."
Yeah.
Well, come to find out, the paid family leave is only for federal workers, not for all workers. So that's super weak up front. But furthermore, we found out the only reason why it was actually included in the bill, that the end result is Ivanka Trump told Daddy, "I want that in the bill." So it had nothing to do with the Democrats.
So you're right. Paid family leave is actually a big thing.
That just shows how silly they are.
Yeah. There you go.
Way to go, guys. Way to end the year with a bunch of winners.
Right.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
Oh, my pleasure, guys.
We'll have more Rising for you right after this.